Hi, Brit.
Hi, Kristian.
Welcome to the Superhuman Mind YouTube channel.
Superhuman Mind channel.
So today we were going to
Today,
talk about a little bit about attachment styles, and in particular, one called avoidant attachment style. So maybe we can start by explaining what the attachment theory is.
yeah, so the attachment theory was developed by John Bowlby, and his colleague, his female colleague, and it was originally a theory about development. So infants, they were testing infants, how infants were um, attached in different ways to their parents, depending on, in part, by how the parents treated them. And then later on, it was extended to adults as well. So it turned out that adults actually have these attachment styles as well. And sometimes they're the same as they were in childhood, but sometimes they're not, because they can be shaped by your later relationships, your relationships with your friends and in at school and so on. So the two main attachment styles, the anxious, also sometimes called dependent
Mm-hmm.
attachment style, and then the avoidant attachment style. And then you can divide those into categories. We're not going to do that today anyway.
And then is there also a normal attachment style, kind of as a...
Yeah, so that's the normal attachment style is the secure one, right? So
Okay.
if you're right in the middle, you're securely attached, and that means you don't have any attachment problems. It's pretty rare to be completely securely attached. You usually fall a little bit on one side or the other,
Mm-hmm.
but you could, in principle, be completely securely attached. And then uh, most people would fall a little bit towards the anxious or dependent, clingy side, or they would fall towards the avoidant, commitment phobic sort of side. And then some people, of course, are extreme.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to say just a little bit about the anxious, dependent, clingy attachment style? Uh, that's
Sure.
not the one we're going to focus on, but I thought we might say a little bit about it.
So, I mean, that's basically the clingy or needy boyfriend or girlfriend that we've either had or heard about. Um, the one who is checking up on you all the time, or maybe screening your phone calls or checking your text messages, or if not on such an extreme extent, just kind of not confident in the relationship, or worried that they're seeing cracks or issues when they're not seeing issues.
Yeah, or they want to spend time with you all the time. Otherwise, they feel insecure, right? So they feel
Mm-hmm.
insecure if they don't spend time with another person, particularly the romantic person in their life,
Mm-hmm.
or if they don't have a partner. Then it could also be their friends, that they want to spend time with their friends all the time because they have a hard time being alone. And then the avoidance is when it's more extreme, is the kind of person who does not want to spend a lot of time with a romantic partner, if there is a romantic partner at all,
Mm-hmm.
and needs a lot of alone time, and is also usually sort of commitment phobic, so is not does not go into a relationship easily.
Mm-hmm.
And if they go into a relationship, they don't want too many commitments usually, or it takes a long time for them to get used to the thought of having these commitments. So it will usually take them a longer time to say agree to be married or agree to move in together. So we should also say, of course, that there are people um, who are mixed, so that they behave differently in different circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So they can have the more clingy attachment style in some contexts, but the avoidant in other contexts. So that's also a possibility, though it's more common, I think, to be a little bit more on the one side or a little bit more on the other side.
Mm-hmm. And
So
So what? So how do you recognize that you have that kind of that you might have that kind of issue, or that a significant other might have that?
So if you meet a potential romantic partner, let's say that you meet someone at a party, and you start hanging out, but in a very casual way, and it's clearly romantic, but it's not a relationship. You have not agreed to it being a relationship.
Mm.
But then the issue might come up about whether it should be a relationship or not. And you feel really, really uncomfortable about the very thought about it becoming a relationship. If you feel very, very uncomfortable about using the term girlfriend or boyfriend, and you prefer it to be just casual and perhaps not just non-committal, but maybe also non-exclusive,
Mm-hmm.
then you're more avoidant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're if you feel uneasy about it not having a title or not having a name and your relationship is undefined, then you're probably more on the. You could still be, of course, a securely attached person, and it's just that you've come to that normal time in
Mm-hmm.
your life, but you could also be more on the anxious, clingy side.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
um,
that problem can kind of crop up throughout a relationship, right? So you can enter into a relationship maybe reluctantly, and then kind of have periods where you kind of you freak out and you realize that it's getting more serious, and then you kind of draw back, or you look for
yeah,
signs that there's something wrong and a reason to draw back.
yeah. So you could have a little bit of maybe you could have a bit of a wave between feeling pretty securely attached when things are status quo, right? So if you actually got married and now you're in this marriage, right, but you don't have kids,
Mm-hmm.
um, and things are going fine, it's status quo, so you feel pretty securely attached, then maybe the issue of kids come up and you freak out,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a further commitment. Then you might sort of go back into a more avoidant attachment style, or it could be at a different stage of the relationship, right? It could be that, okay, so you call each other boyfriend and girlfriend, but now the question of marriage comes up and you freak out, or moving in together,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that question comes up and you freak out. Um, so that would be an example of the avoidant attachment style. There, of course, are also those people who don't want to move onto the relationship status ever if they can avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
They might still have this, of course, need for intimacy, so they might still have hookups or casual relationships,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But if it becomes a little too serious and it's starting to move in the direction of sort of a real relationship with commitments and exclusivity, then they might freak out. Um, and then there are even more extreme people, that where they want to be friends with a person, and they are actually romantically interested in the person,
Mm-hmm.
but even moving from that to something romantic is scary for them. So friendship feels like, okay, that's not that they can handle that, and but moving further than that, um, is just too much for them. So they would be very very avoidant, a very avoidant attachment style.
So how would you overcome something like that?
So you probably would have to take things slow. For some individuals, that doesn't even help.
Mm-hmm.
But for some individuals, you just have to put up with that. It takes a longer time for them to get used to the idea, and there's also ways to do it in a more slow way. So if you're with a person and you want to be in a relationship with that person, but the person doesn't want a relationship, you could start by agreeing to, say, being exclusive, but not necessarily tell the whole world about your relationship
Mm-hmm.
or your friends or your family. So you take one step at a time. Maybe you start by being exclusive, so you have this agreement that you're exclusive. Um, and then maybe you're seen out together with your friends, and then maybe you can postpone the visit with the parents,
Mm-hmm.
and So for some individuals that can help. What are some other ideas that that you think might help?
Well, I mean, I think one important thing to do is to kind of try to be kind of introspective about how about what you're actually feeling versus what you think you're supposed to be feeling. Um, because I think sometimes you can maybe recognize that certain decisions you're making aren't because they might not be compatible with what you want. So maybe you do want some sort of romantic relationship with a person, but you're realizing that you can realize that you're kind of the way you're responding to certain overtures on their part, um, or avoiding certain social situations aren't have no real basis other than you're just freaking out. And
Yeah,
maybe therapy I
you could.
think can help with that too.
Yeah, you you could also introspect and find out what it is that you're really scared of.
Mm.
So for some people, what they if they're scared of entering sort of an exclusive committed relationship, it's that they lose their independence and their ability to hang out with their friends without their romantic partner, or maybe they lose a lot of their alone time, and that is not always the case, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
depends on the other person, of course. So it might be worth like discussing those things before you actually agree to a relationship, because if that's what you're scared of, sort of losing your independence, maybe that's something the other person is completely cool with, that you are, you need that many days on your own, or you need that much time on your own,
Mm-hmm.
or you still need to see your friends on your own, um, because maybe you have a group of friends where if, let's say you were a woman, and maybe you have these female friends where it's always the female friends that hang out, so it'd be kind of weird to bring your boyfriend along.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe if you get to talk about that and it turns out not to be a problem, then maybe your fears will go away.
Especially
What?
if your partner is avoidant, also, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it
So
might turn
that.
out they really want some time alone too. So.
I mean, in some sense, that's a perfect match if you are avoidant to also have another avoidant partner, because probably one of the worst scenarios is the very, very clingy partner and the very, very avoidant partner.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not going to go over well. What do you think causes this avoidance behavior?
Well, I think it can have something to do with the way you're raised in the as a child. So the way you develop relationships with your parents, I know have some or a lot of an influence on it. For example, if you have one parent who has that you have a very strained relationship with, and you kind of grew up feeling that they never um, attended to your needs when you were um, um, trying to let them know that it's a coping mechanism, kind of to deal with the fact that they're not um, that they may not really love you, or they might with the fear of not being loved or nurtured as much as you need to be.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there are coping strategies, right, that work with some parents and not with others. So the parents might behave in the same way towards the child, but then in if the child then seeks attention, and when they actively seek attention, they get attention,
Mm-hmm.
then they might be more, or have a tendency to become more clingy. If on the other hand, when they try to seek attention, they get pushed away, they might eventually just say, okay, then I'll just cope with things on my own, and so they might become more avoided because it's a coping style.
Mm-hmm.
Though I think that in many cases it can also be a result of how your future relationships go, right? So
Right.
if you have like really horrible relationships, a number of really horrible relationships, um, maybe let's say you have a number of very, very clingy partners, romantic partners, and they really want a lot of your time, and you find it really exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, you keep running into these people. I think you could become avoidant even if you were not from childhood,
Mm-hmm.
because you are now it seems like your brain is thinking it's a pattern, right? That if you're in a relationship, that's how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost as if there's a habit there that you have to break. That your brain has to sort of imagine that it can be differently. That there are some people who are not clingy, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it could be shaped by your relationships as you start, like as a young person when you have your first boyfriend or girlfriend, and then a young adult when you have your first relationships, and so on. And then if you have a mixture of different kinds of relationships, then maybe that will not affect you. But if you just run into um, a lot of very clingy people, then you might develop this fear of giving up your time to a new person,
Mm-hmm.
because you fear that even if they don't appear that way, once you get into a relationship with them, they will probably appear that way. So I think that's often something that can affect it as well.
Okay. Well, all right.
All right.
Well, thanks for tuning in to the Superhuman Mind YouTube channel, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye, Britt.